Hi guys, welcome back to the Butterfly Effect podcast, and today we are doing our final analysis episode. We are wrapping up the series for Beyond Two Souls. So, Jack, am I right in thinking, mate, that you saw my final playthrough this morning, right? So you've just freshly finished Beyond Two Souls.
Yep, that's right. And then I even watched the bit as well where you went through like YouTube and saw all the other endings as well.
Yeah, of course, because there are a few endings, and we will get to them, but there's a lot to unpack. So we've deliberately left it, so we're just going to talk about the final chapter, really, excluding the epilogue. But we're just going to solely talk about the Black Sun in this episode, and then we're going to full on talk about our feelings, our thoughts to this game, which endings are the best, that malarkey. But this chapter starts off with McGrath saying, "Oh yeah, we found a way to connect entities to the real world." Jodie leaves offended, and you have a little conversation with Ryan where Ryan sort of says, "Oh, I like you." Jodie says she needs time. You don't really get a choice, up to this point. And then we'll have Cole that will speak to us and say, "Oh, be careful when talking to Nathan." And Jack, I just want to say, so you've kind of, mistrusted Nathan for a big part of this game simply because he's Willem Dafoe. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
But he's been a loving father, which Philip couldn't do. And then we get this scene, and yeah, mate, you're completely right. But what's funny is though, Jack, is that you are completely right. But what I like about it is that he's like a villain with layers, because the first thing we get from him, he offers us this paycheck, $500,000 check with a passport, which you can accept or refuse. Do you know what you would have done in this instance?
I probably would have taken the money. However, especially given the opening scene as well, with McGrath saying, "Oh, it's another world that we can conquer. Now we've got rid of the other condenser and all this sort of thing." I was deeply mistrustful of the CIA and all that sort of governmental military department that was in charge of this whole operation ever since really that Ryan betrayed us in literally the chapter called The Mission, right? I feel like there on in I thought, okay, clearly not to be trusted. So that even when in a previous chapter Dawkins says, "Oh, do one more thing and they'll let you go," I didn't really believe it. But nonetheless, if someone's wafting £500,000 in front of you, you're probably going to take it, aren't you?
That's it, because last time she went on the run, she had to go on that ranch, she had to go for that homeless period. So I'm like, there wasn't like a repercussion or a catch-22. It was just take the money, and I'm like, well, yeah, I'll take it. So I accepted the money myself. But before we leave, Dawkins opens the secret room, says, "Oh yeah, like, ever since that night where you channeled, my family for me, I've kept them here." And so it turns out he's trapped his basically late, wife and daughter in this little chamber. And when you speak to them, they're saying stuff like, "Oh, we're trapped, we're in pain, please end our suffering." And then Dawkins just goes into this denial mode where he's like, "No, you're not telling the truth. They want to be with me. They want to stay with me." So firstly, I just kind of want to ask you, do you feel like proud of yourself that you were right, that you called it? Because if you watch it back, there are breadcrumbs. So I don't know if you spotted them and you kind of lapped them up, which is good, and just so well done for you. Or do you still kind of like the fact that this was the twist in the version of Dawkins we got? Do you think that was like the right writing decision as well?
I feel like because the primary reason I called it is because it was Willem Dafoe, right? Fantastic actor, known for his villainous roles. It felt like a perfect fit. It would have been odd if he didn't have that sort of role that he came into. Am I proud of my prediction? Yes. And even going back to like a previous episode, I don't know how far back it was now, but I even called it like that scene where you do channel his dead wife and his dead daughter. I said in that analysis episode, I feel like this is going to be the starting point of where his villain arc, that's what you look back at as to where his villain arc comes in. And you can see, can't you, there's like even very subtle things, like throughout the early stages of the game, he's like the glasses and white lab coat guy, and then later on he's suddenly wearing the dark black suit He's obviously at the top of the tree for like the DPA and he's in tandem with the CIA. So there's like even like the little subtle physical things where you can see like, okay, yeah, he has shifted position a little bit, which I thought was really clever. But one thing I would say to almost go slightly against my prediction is that I'm really glad that his villainy was actually more nuanced. You know, you could feel sympathy for the guy clearly because he's going through grief. And I feel like actually it will make a really good like deep dive episode into Dawkins because there's so much you can go into. Like there's the whole playing God thing, like interfering with life and death. You're talking about grief, power, addiction, you could say as well, with the fact that he's kept them there suspended for so long. He just feels like a very human character. So yeah, you know, I like the way they handled it. It wasn't like he become this megalomaniac that suddenly wanted to destroy the world, you know.
For sure, because like he might actually just be the best written Quantic Dream villain, to be honest, because I mean, we look at like the villains in other games and, you know, you've got like maybe your Scott Shelbys, you know, your Perkins, whatever it is, just humans in general, the government kind of thing, which is usually is the Quantic Dream villain. But what I like about Dawkins is that he is like a good person. He basically brought us up and yeah, like of course everything was at the heart of his work, but you get the sense he truly cares about Jodie. But he's not a villain because he's born evil and wants to rule the world. He is a victim of grief and pain and suffering, and he's going through something. He's really struggling to come to terms with the loss of his family in this really tragic way. And yeah, like it's just he's in denial, and the grief has led him to this point where, because of the position and his field of work, he's kind of like, yeah, trapped his like family, and the souls are stuck in this chamber, and he doesn't understand that, you know, they're in pain. And then he's in complete denial when you try to like reflect to him that yeah, like they want to leave. I will touch more on him later because we will see him later in the episode, but it probably makes him look even worse at the moment we say goodbye, that we're knocked out by the soldiers. And again, lad, this is something that you've brought up, the various parallels, but what is it with Quantic Dream, you know, in their bondage, liking their women to be tied down? You mentioned it before, we had it with Kara, we've had it with Madison. And now suddenly, mate, we have it with Jodie, where, and it's quite dark, this one, actually, because McGrath wants to inject you with the neuroacid, which would eventually render you in the same state like your mother befell. So yeah, what did you make of this whole sort of scene, and maybe even the aftermath with Cole and Ryan, mate?
It was a prediction that I made. Obviously, it didn't really take long to come into fruition. Like 20 seconds later, it's confirmed. But as soon as I saw Jodie get knocked out, I thought, yeah, that confirms what I was thinking. They're not going to let her go. The whole paying her off sort of thing was a complete lie. And as soon as she's strapped to the chair, you then get the harking back, don't you? The little flashbacks to like her mum and stuff, and McGrath's there stood in your face. I was thinking, yeah, I can see what they're doing. It's going to be like a rinse and repeat. They can't afford to let her go. She knows too much. And obviously she harnesses this power, you know, and they ultimately want to be the people that harness this power. And you know what, funny enough, bit of a wild tangent, I'll say, but having seen the most recent like Mission Impossible film, it felt really sort of similar. Like the plot in that is basically like all these governments like after this AI because they want to use it, because they want to be the ultimate power, you know. And it just felt very similar, like here with like the entity and the infra world and being able to conquer it and be in charge of it and all that sort of thing. So that was like a strange sort of recent parallel for me. But yeah, but then obviously the one thing that she did have on her side was Aiden, and she wasn't stopped by that portal thing that time that was in that little underwater base. So she could go get Cole and Ryan to help her, couldn't she?
Yeah, and it was, I know the Aiden gameplay is really consistent. Sometimes he can, like, go 5 meters before Jodie's like, oh, you're going too far. But this time he can wander around a whole fucking building till he finds Ryan and Cole. And, like, we'll talk more about what we think about their characters later because, you know, like, it's not the last we'll see of them. But, yeah, it was a really cool sort of puzzle scene, and it was kind of nice to sort of see these sort of, like, 2 bros almost come down and play the heroics. These are sort of 2 of the people we kind of grew up with, like alongside Dawkins. So it was nice that you got to do that whole puzzle where you get to like save Jodie. But mate, obviously when they escape, it's too late and the entities are flying everywhere. McGrath, the fucking idiot, like, you know, wants power and stuff, but he's just basically, you know, nearly ended planet Earth kind of thing. We get the cool moment though, and I know Ryan is a mixed character. People like him. He actually has like the most picked ending, to be honest, out of all of them statistically. A lot of people still feel really iffy with him. A lot of people maybe just sort of see him platonically, but not romantically, which is fair. But I will admit, there was that a little bit of redemption for me the moment he punches McGrath. I don't know if you felt the same.
Yeah, it was a good moment, wasn't it? I will say this, obviously jumping forward slightly, that I've been very anti-Ryan throughout this. Not just because of his actions in like the mission, but also I felt like that the romance was a little bit forced down your throat. It felt a bit jarring, especially in this not chronological version of the game, because at 1 minute he's picking you up to take you to the CIA, next minute he loves you and he wants dinner with you and this sort of thing. But I would say that my stance has softened on Ryan, having watched Black Sun. But to be honest, I'm not quite sure whether I would have gone for the Ryan ending or not. I'm a little bit undecided on that score. I probably would have gone with the one that you picked, mate, which I'm sure we'll get to.
No matter what we think about Ryan, you know, he punched the common enemy, which is McGrath. We hate that guy. So that guy leaves the game, sort of says something like, oh, we're all going to die, leaves, you know, like the coward he is. And then we get this whole section, almost feels a bit sci-fi-y, where you, Ryan, and Cole will put on these belts to go into, like, sort of the world to shut down the portal by hand. And it's a pretty cool scene, you know, there's a little stealth sequence. But then... you know, we'll talk about Cole as a character because this is pretty much where we say goodbye to him, other than, you know, him appearing at the end. But he can get attacked by an entity here. Or no, he will be attacked by an entity. And you have to heal him in a really sensitive time sort of pressure. And if you fail this, Cole will actually die at this game. I was lucky enough, mate, that I managed to keep him alive. But in all the endings, you know, like if he did die, sort of, there'll be a sort of similar ending, but with like a gravestone involved rather than sort of just seeing Cole. So I just kind of want to ask you point blank, mate, what did you make of the Cole character, and what did you make of like this sort of ending, you know, where he could potentially die or live here, mate?
Yeah, I really liked Cole. He was just that sort of solid father figure, wasn't it? And actually, funnily enough, to almost draw parallels with like Philip and Susan, you know, when you're looking at perhaps them two and then Dawkins and Cole, you've got the parent that's there for the child, you know, that really nurtures them, looks after them, wants them to do well. And then you've got the other one that's slightly more corruptible, like your Philip and your Dawkins, you know. So I thought those little parallels were quite cool. But obviously, Cole was certainly the more nurturing figure in Jodie's life. And yeah, overall, like a solid character. I can't help but feel that maybe I'd have got more out of him had I seen it in chronological order. But that is obviously a question that remains, because I think that at least then you'd have those early scenes. It's obviously less jumbled and you'll be able to really nail some of the times and things you have, moments you have with him. As far as the scene goes, yeah, like, it's good. I'm glad that there was jeopardy at the end of this game, because I feel like for the most part it has been pretty linear. Of course, there is variation within chapters to get to the same conclusion, but you know, the fact that you can have some like life or death stakes here does just up the tension a little bit. And I did really like that scene, the whole shaky cam thing, the entities above you, the stealth, Ryan, like you're a team of three going in there to do the job, aren't you? So yeah, honestly, overall I think he's one of the good guys.
Yeah, massively so, because it's like Dawkins and Cole were like your parents that you never really had, and Cole was definitely like the mother. And it was like just really cool to sort of see, you know, him like and Jodie evolve throughout the game. And yeah, like luckily I've never had him die, but like it is tragic when you see it, because he is probably like the best soul in the game, because Ryan and Dawkins, you know, have their grey areas, and you know that you lose respect for them in certain aspects, but Cole's just the one figure that was just solid the entire way. But regardless, mate, we go in, so Cole has to stay back whether he's dead or healed and resting. And then we go in there with Ryan. We swiftly lose Ryan, and then sort of like Jodie goes on this sort of thing where she'll see loads of figures, you know, such as like Philip and that. But then we stumble into Dawkins, and it's really interesting. I'm sure, as you can see by the reaction of my stream, mate, I totally forgot about this ending. I just kind of wanted your take on what happened with Dawkins here.
A little bit of a surprise, and I think maybe it feeds into something that I'll come into when we talk about like my overall conclusion of the game. I expected there to be sort of like a boss fight, but actually, and I was a little bit puzzled as well with the choices. I don't know if it was like the choices that you made in that moment or accumulation of ones that you made throughout the game, but it was sort of like that you ran into him, you said a few words, and he was sort of like, yeah, she's got a point, and then topped himself. So on the one hand, I was thinking, you know, he's made the right decision. Like, why would you go to all this effort? If you wanted to just be with them that badly, why would you risk the lives of basically everyone on planet Earth? Why would you introduce another world into this world? It just, you know, a long, long time. I think he said 15 years, didn't he? Or 5 years that he was getting that tech to keep them around with him. And then you can see, can't you, that he then kills himself. I guess what I want to know is like what the alternative is, you know, like if you fail to convince him, like does it break out into something a bit more actiony and like a fight, or what?
To be honest, there are two sort of other variations, and I'm kind of unsure how to achieve them. So if Nathan doesn't shoot himself, he'll try to shoot you instead. Now, if he tries to shoot you, either Aiden steps in and saves you and kills Dawkins, or Ryan jumps in front of the bullet and Ryan and Dawkins somehow die together. I'm unsure, I've not seen the footage, I've just looked up on some research for that one. So those are two other variations, and you can actually have Ryan die at this point, but regardless, Dawkins always has to die at this point.
Ah, fair enough. I mean, it would have been odd to be able to keep him alive, and I must say that it probably was touching. The fact as well that when he is reunited with his daughter and his wife, he reverts to like the old Dawkins, which harkens back to like what Jodie said like moments before, where, you know, they don't recognise you. That's why they don't want to be with you anymore. You know, when, you know, how like back in his office, like his wife and daughter were saying, let us go, let us go. The fact that he physically changes, he's got the glasses again, he sort of looks like the Dawkins that we've seen earlier on in the game. It then sort of has a nicer ending for him in a way. So yeah, again, like it's not your classic villain death, is it? But I don't think Dawkins was a villain in the traditional completely evil sense. I think it's, like I said earlier, a little bit more nuanced.
I do agree, and I was really happy, like, not happy that he topped himself, but it turns out that is probably the best ending you can get, because he walks away with his family, and, you know, it is a nice ending. I mean, obviously, you know, he's probably killed thousands here, so I can't fully condone his actions, I won't lie, but, you know, considering he was the dad that Jodie never really had, was nice to kind of see him get that, because sometimes I hate it when it's like, oh, we've got a villain, we have to kill them in the most brutal way. And it was nice that, you know, he was at peace and he did get that nice ending, albeit as dark as it was. So yeah, I mean, well done for calling the Dawkins thing, mate. Like, but yeah, so we move on, and then we kind of get this moment where we're fighting entities with Ryan. And I think like our belt breaks and it ends up that Ryan gives us his one. So, because we're the one strong enough to kind of go forward and, you know, sort of like shut everything down. So Ryan sort of will go missing for a big part of the game here, but like for some reason, I don't know why, a bit inconsistent, but like the entities just don't really attack him. He's just kind of left to his devices there, and he's just kind of sat for the remainder. We go through all these horrible flashbacks, recalling people like Nora, Celine, the teens at the party, potentially the sexual assault if we had that. And then we kind of get this other sort of flashback of the backstory of Aiden. And I think in an early analysis episode, mate, you kind of were wondering, I hope it's explained who Aiden is, if like why we're attached to him. So it turns out that yeah, he's our twin, and he was strangled with the umbilical cord in the womb, and he was forever tied to us, which is what Aiden is. He is our twin brother who's tethered to us. So I just kind of want your take on, were you happy with that kind of writing decision?
Yeah, I was actually. I was pleasantly surprised. I'm glad that it had a lot more. I'm trying to think of a better word than that, sentimentality to it. I'm glad it had that and that it was something quite close to Jodie rather than just some external power that she just had a gift and that's just who she was. It did, when I did see that, it did make me think about the mum though, because they said earlier on in the game that the mum had a bit of a power as well. And I was thinking, okay, so is it that she also had someone like Aiden, or like I didn't know what the mum's power was in the end, but it did make me question that a little bit. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like when you think about the early scenes, like with like the dinner and stuff, the moments where he can intervene and feel like that, you know, she shouldn't be with Ryan. That's sort of like the brotherly instinct coming in and making it, you know, her feel a bit more safe and like almost saying, look, this isn't right for you, you know. So yeah, like looking back through the game, you sort of look at it and go, yeah, it does make a lot of sense.
Massively so. Yeah, so no, I think I'm in the same camp as you, to be honest. I like that there was a bit of an explanation. I didn't call it. Funny enough, a little bit of a fun fact in our stream. I think it was Lola who said that she played the game on multiplayer with her brother, so it was like a really fitting ending. And I imagine that's
Oh,
quite a cool sibling bonding experience if you find out that's how your game ends, which is pretty cool. But ultimately, lad, we are at the end of the game, and there are kind of a bunch of sub choices here. The first choice we get is because we're between those two portals, that really lovely shot where you have a white wall and a black wall, and you can either like die basically to be with Aiden, who I forgot to mention earlier does disintegrate. So we no longer have Aiden. He's gone. He's gone into like the entity thing. So we can either be with Aiden, Nora, who's fitting well in this world, and Shimasani as well from the Navajo chapter. I will again apologise. In my stream, I called this group Latin. They are Native American. Please do not cancel me, YouTube. And then you can also remain in our current world where, like you're looking at Ryan and then Jodie sort of says, oh, I still have so much to do in this world. Maybe I'm not ready to leave it yet. I just kind of wanted to, I know like you watched my playthrough since you didn't have the means to play it, mate, but I just kind of want to gauge which choice would you have taken here?
it's a good question. I feel like I probably would have leaned to honestly following what you did. Like it would have been, no, she's got to go and live her life. When you think that her basic upbringing has been that she's been a lab rat, she's been watched by people, manipulated by people, that this is like her breakout moment. She's fought off the entity, she's got out of the CIA, and I think she can now go and make something of herself and go and live her life. I think that's ultimately how I'd have looked at it. It would have been a difficult choice though, because knowing that she wouldn't be, or at least I thought this at the time, she wouldn't have been tethered to Aiden anymore. She's got her real mum there. She's got loved ones there. Do you know what I mean? Like, so the temptation would have been for her to be with them. But yeah, I think I would have ultimately kept her in our world, mate.
Yeah, I think so as well. And it's cool as well because, like, if you do pick Beyond, you pretty much get one ending, while with if you remain living, you kind of get full sub endings. So what we'll do, lad, is we'll talk about the Beyond ending first. Now, but actually, one other thing is that you can actually die before doing the, against the entities, failing all the QTEs. And there is just this dark ending where there's just a bit of a monologue of, oh yeah, the entities conquered Earth kind of thing, and I regret a lot. And you can just have a dark ending where it's almost just like game over with a bit of a monologue. Luckily, I didn't get that one. But yeah, there is this Beyond ending, and she just kind of mentions, oh yeah, I can do whatever I want in this world, everything's at my whim. But then it transpires that she still visits the world, and she like does these invisible check-ins on her loved ones kind of thing. So you see Ryan at one point, and I think I sort of had it on the stream where like, yeah, he's got his eye patch on and he looks like he's absolutely in bits kind of thing. And then if Cole's still alive, you can he senses you, he like feels the cold, and apparently you can write on the computer like, oh, your little princess is here kind of thing, and he gets like a good smell. So it's a nice little wholesome Cole moment. And you also get to check in and look at like the homeless people, watch TV as well, and you'll have Stan look over at the the girl, and it turns out that like this girl is like psychic. I don't know, like Zoe, Tuesday's kid. And it turns out, I don't know why this is, but somehow with the childbirth, somehow you passed your psychic onto her as well in some sense. Make it make sense in the comments, guys, if you can. I'm at a loss. But then we'll weirdly get this sort of Zoe monologue, how she sort of says, oh, I'm special too, I have these abilities. And then it kind of ends with her kind of looking like, you know, almost on a war field in a way, ready to conquer kind of thing and battle. Bit of a weird ending, but yeah, I don't know what if you make of this one.
Yeah, there's a lot there to digest. I think the first point I'll come to is the potential sequel, which I think is like room for another video, mate. That's certainly something I was not expecting, because typically, like the Quantic Dream games that I've played so far, I've never felt like when I've ended it, like that, you know, potentially there could be another one of these here. And obviously, we're playing this over 10 years since the game come out, so clearly maybe the game wasn't successful enough, or maybe they just wanted to leave it like that. But there hasn't been a sequel since, has there? But yeah, I think again, like when you sort of, she's going back and she's seeing Ryan and she's seeing Cole and this sort of stuff, and I feel like they're sort of like nice little moments, just to almost show that there is still that connection there between the characters. Maybe it would have felt a little bit cold and detached to almost pan to these characters and not have any sort of happiness to it in a way, because you've got her being happy with loved ones and stuff if she did choose that the realm beyond, but then you're cutting to these other characters and they're absolutely devastated. So I think it sort of crosses that bridge nicely, where she still gets to communicate with them every now and then, but you also get the sense that, okay, like that's all well and good, but they've now got to go on and live their own lives, you know. So yeah, like it was a nice ending. The Zoe thing, I'm glad you semi-cleared that up, because I was confused, like how on earth has this Zoe girl got power? So if it's the case that it's just been transferred over from Jodie, then I can completely buy that. And yeah, it was a good ending.
Sure. I mean, we'll speak about the living ones, and there's 4 sub-choices within here, mate. You can either remain alone, see the homeless people, go back with Ryan, or see Jay. Which one would you like us to start with?
Let's choose Jay.
I mean, this was Felicie's choice, because she got a massive crush on Jay. Joke's on you, haha. I don't know, for me, we've kind of mentioned this. I wouldn't say the chapter was bad by any means, but I almost felt it was probably the weakest choice out of the endings to an extent, maybe. Just because I felt less of a tie. We pretty much like only have the 2 days with them, really. I mean, I know potentially the same with the homeless bunch, but we've already spoke in previous chapters how we felt less of a tie to these guys. I myself felt like the Jay romance was so left field out of nowhere, like it didn't make sense, because you can kind of be cuddled into a bed with him. So it's definitely not one I've ever picked. If you do, that is completely fair, and I like that, you know, you guys got a kick out of that. But yeah, kind of, what is your take on this whole ending, mate?
I think of the endings, and this is why I wanted to start with this one, it's the one that I would have least likely picked, actually, for the reasons that you've just said, mate. I didn't buy the connection completely. There was that moment where they had that little one-to-one, but beyond that, it felt a little bit more hostile when I didn't quite see the chemistry between Jodie and Jay. I think it was just another one of those, let's just throw out someone from, you know, earlier on in the game. And I think it's probably a symptom as well of Navajo feeling... There's something about that chapter that feels so detached from the rest of the game. And I don't want to say it's as simple as, oh, it's because they're in a desert and just visually everything looks a lot more different. But there's just something about it where I'm like, it almost just doesn't sit neatly with the rest of the game. And I feel like I can then look at Jay like that as a consequence, where for some reason the relationship just doesn't really stand up for me. And the fact that she can run to him and then they get in bed together and all this sort of thing, it just wouldn't have felt right in my playthrough. So yeah, I'm not sure about this one, mate. Sorry, okay. Felicie.
Yeah, sorry indeed. One thing we do get at the end of this chapter, though, so obviously we're under the assumption that Aiden disintegrated and we no longer have him. And we'll get this in 3 of the 4 endings, mate, but Aiden does write on the window or the mirror, like, still here. What do you take of that? That kind of Aiden, I guess what it implies is that he's untethered, but it doesn't mean he's gone, that he's still with Jodie. It's just that he's not always going to be with her. He can kind of come and go as he pleases, kind of thing. Were you a fan of that?
You know what? In the heat of the moment, it was nice. Now I've let it settle in a little bit. I think that would have been more effective had it literally just been the alone ending. So imagine she didn't pick anyone and she was sat there alone, and then like she got the little note on the mirror saying still here. But I feel like because it happens in every other one, it's sort of like, so she's not really moving on, like she's still tethered to him in some way. Like it felt like that whole finale was a natural breaking point of the 2 worlds. And don't get me wrong, it would be sad in one sense because he's her twin, and you know there's sort of like the familial, you know, relationship and connection there. But I feel like it would have made more sense for them to not have done that in the ones where she chose people to be with, if you get what I mean.
I do, and to kind of re-emphasize your point, mate, I do think it almost devalues the ending for those who pick to go beyond, because you're going to beyond to hang out, I guess, with Shimasani, Nora, and Aiden, right? And I feel like, you know, for those who picked that ending because they wanted to be with Aiden, it turns out, oh well, he's in the living world now as well, you know. So
yeah,
maybe like kind of like a less wholesome way, because you know you can't physically see Aiden. But still, though, I don't know. Yeah, like I do think it definitely devalues that ending. So I actually do agree with you in that one. It is like a nice, in the heat of the moment, yeah, really nice that Jodie, her, like the way her smile lights up when she sees that he's still here, you know, considering they've been together their whole life. But yeah, no, I fully agree on that one, mate. The next ending, because you kind of harped to the alone choice, so I think we should maybe talk about that one. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is a beauty in sort of saying, oh yeah, I want to remain alone, I'm not really attached to any of these people, I can be independent, I can remain by myself. But I do think it almost didn't really make that much sense anyway, because before the choice, she's kind of at that beautiful, like, you know, river log cabin, and she sort of says something along the lines of, oh, I'm so lonely, each day's the same, I need to like go out and start my life again. But the idea of, I mean, you know, you could still do that alone, but I had the hint, the impression that this Jodie character was lonely. She wanted to start a new life. She needed people in her life. She needed a purpose. And that involved being around someone, whether that's romantic or platonic, whatever. So I didn't really get this ending. I mean, it was like fairly cool that, you know, you can kind of like go and see some people again and you have to chat with Ryan to say, look, sorry, just not for me. I'm too hurt from this. But yeah, I wanted to get your take on the alone ending.
Yeah, first thing I'll bring up is like the little lake house or the lodge that she's at. Exactly like the lodge in As Dusk Falls. There's a few locations in this game, how, you know, having recently played As Dusk Falls, I'm like, oh my god, it's like literally the exact same. So that was fun to point out. As far as the alone ending goes, yeah, I mean, had it been Jay and Ryan, and you couldn't pick, you know, Zoe and like the homeless crew, I probably would have gone for this ending. But because of the relationships that she built, the emotional investment that she had like in that homeless chapter, yeah, it's sort of like, well, why would she? You know, she's grown up in a situation where, you know, obviously her mum, she didn't have a relationship with. She then had step parents who then left her. She then had, you know, 2 fatherly figures in Colin Dawkins, one of which obviously had his own grievances and went a bit skew-whiff towards the end. So she's probably craving some sort of family unit, some stable family unit. And in my eyes, I feel like that's why the homeless people naturally, as an ending for me, makes the most sense. But again, there's another school of thought that's to say that actually it might be the complete opposite, that she might look at it and go, you know what, I've been sort of like so dependent on people my whole life that I can just do this gig by myself, you know. So I do understand people that choose it. I think it's just a matter of perspective. And she says, doesn't she, that she doesn't want a normal life. You know, she's been basically trapped and controlled her whole life. She wants to go and do her own thing, so you can almost understand that reasoning for it as well.
Yeah, I do agree. I just almost wish though that the ending, the alone ending, was maybe a bit more upbeat, just to kind of really like make it feel like, yeah, you don't need anyone, you are independent now, you can start a new life, and it's all bright. But it just seems really like the color palette's all grey and dark, and it's raining, and you're just in this like shitty motel room. So it almost just feels like you got to the end and you had a bad ending, and I just wish they made something, yeah, a bit more positive, a bit more upbeat, like, yeah, new life, Jodie, the world's yours now. But instead, you know, I mean, it is nice that we again get the still here message from Aiden. But yeah, like, no, I fully agree on that one. I think maybe we talk about Ryan, mate, before we get to our one, because Ryan's a hot topic, right? Like, this was the original ending I saw because, as I mentioned, I was a 360 gamer back in the day. I didn't have a PlayStation, so I had to watch the playthrough through PewDiePie on YouTube, and this is the ending he picked, so this is kind of the only one I really knew for a long time. And don't get me wrong, it is a really nice, wholesome moment that, you know, when he comes in and he drops his shopping bag and, you know, he could have the eye patch on. And then you obviously get the romantic scene where, you know, you're on a sailing boat and you're starting a life together. It is the most commonly picked ending. One thing I kind of want to ask you, and, you know, like, we've kind of skirted around the topic a lot, and you sort of mentioned it with Ryan, though, but I guess for me, a big reason I can't bring myself to pick it is that I almost forgive Ryan to an extent, because I do genuinely think he's sorry. He ends up punching McGrath, he gives us the belt, he saves us, you know, when we're all tied up. I do think he changes, and I do think his heart goes in the right place. I think that when he lied to us, he was basically like a pawn on a chessboard. I do think he had his marching orders. Admittedly, yeah, he lied to you, and, you know, I don't think he had the same empathy that Jodie did. But I do think with the blood on Jodie's hands, you know, because it doesn't change the fact that Salim's dad's dead and she's killed a load of innocent people, a democratic leader, I do think the damage is beyond repair. And I could see them like maybe being friends, but I just don't buy the romantic angle. And like we mentioned as well, the potential grooming and the fact there is a big age gap, you know. So I don't know if you fully share my sentiment there, mate.
Yeah, I wouldn't have gone for the romantic angle. Like I said earlier, my stance on him has softened because of the punching of the McGrath, the portable containment field. He goes in with you, he saves you in a couple of instances. You've said already that he can jump in front of Dorkinson's bullet. So he does sort of live up to what he said in the game, that he wants to sort of become that hero figure. I get it. But I think ultimately, you know, this is going to sound like a really weird sort of comparison, but I think it's more in the writing, you know. I don't see the chemistry between these two characters like I would say, you know, Rachel and Chloe from Life is Strange. I know that's a really weird one, but that relationship, I buy it, I see it. This one, no, not quite. And again, this is another thing I'll point out, is that I wonder, going back, playing it chronologically, would that have any sort of difference? I wonder whether that would change my opinion in some way. But I think, you know, in the background, it's almost like what you were saying as well, mate. It's like too much has happened. It's almost like her ghosts would always be following her around because he would be there, and it would be like the reminders of things that went in the past. So no, I wouldn't have gone the romantic route either, mate. But yeah, it would have been nice to keep him alive. I'd go that far and maybe stay as friends.
The same here, but I am happy with the ending I picked. It's the one I did in my original first playthrough, and it's the one we did again here. I left it up to a vote, and this is the one we ended up landing on. I quite like the ending because it's just really wholesome to see these people who have the best hearts, because again, I will reiterate, they were the first people who picked Jodie up without knowing what she is. They don't see her as a utility. They just see a girl that's in need of help. They sort of save her, and in turn she saves them back, and they're just like a family, because like I say, there's no usage. It's just pure, oh, there's a human who needs our help here. So I really like him, and like we said, the writing's really good. We had all the themes of like grief, you know, domestic violence potentially, addiction, alcoholism. There's all this stuff, and then it's just really wholesome to see them a lot more well groomed and dressed, and they have an apartment. Some of them have landed jobs. They have Zoe. They're all living together. I just found it a really wholesome ending. So I just kind of want to ask you, yeah, is this the ending you would have picked, and how did it feel to see, well, the homeless bunch again?
Yeah, it is. It is the ending I would have gone for, and it refers back to the point I said before about like the family unit thing. I think it makes the most sense. It's that thing as well where, like, especially in the homeless chapter, you know, they didn't have anything apart from each other. You know, which again says a lot about how they're like their treatment with Jodie and like bringing her into the fold and stuff like this. So again, like that's another reason why I think this one just makes sense the most. But again, like it's nice to see that they've also moved on with their lives. They're sort of making progress. They've got their own place. Obviously, Zoe's grown up a little bit, and then it obviously leads into that section, doesn't it, where she's obviously got a power. But yeah, I think in terms of fulfillment, I think this is the one that is the most positive. I can't really think of a negative with this one, lad.
Yeah, well, one thing I will say though, with the whole Zoe ending, because you do get the kind of same thing you did with, like, if you sort of choose Beyond and then you can visit her and she has her monologue. Funny enough, when I picked this, I just had that ending where you're just there with Zoe and it's like, oh, she's special too, and we look at this battlefield, and it just felt really abrupt and off to me. And it wasn't until I saw the other ending where it connected the dots where Zoe gets her monologue. So I almost just wish that Zoe monologue was in this chapter as well, because it would have like made a lot more sense to me. Because I do have a little bit of a bitter taste with that Zoe ending without the context. So it's my only gripe with it, but nonetheless, I am glad I picked it because, yeah, like, I absolutely adore Stan, Tuesday, Jimmy, and Walter. Glad I remembered their names there. So yeah, that is the ending we got, mate. The one I am happy with. So that is kind of like the ending of Beyond Two Souls, mate. But I mean, there is a lot to unpack here. Firstly, I mean, I'll ask you, mate, if you had to rank the game out of 10, after freshly having seen the playthrough this morning, where would it land for you?
I want to say like 6.5, a 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it gets higher than that. Like I've said before, I don't think it gets. It's a good game. It is a good game, but it just doesn't hit the top tier of Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human for me. As you can well tell if you've listened to all these analysis series, I do reserve some sort of judgment a little bit because I have seen it in like the mixed up mode. Maybe chronological things would be a little bit more cohesive and things would start to make sense. Maybe you'd buy into relationships more because again you've had that time and that chronology of developing them. Another little gripe that I'll probably say towards it is it's like there's I don't know, it's sort of like you know who the villain is but you don't know who the villain is. It's like the Americans and all that, they're like pretty bad, right? Because they obviously want to like interfere with this world and then you've got Dawkins has got his thing. I sort of wish that the entities was in it a little bit more. But I couldn't quite put a pin in like who is the baddie here, and I'm still trying to work out whether that's a good thing or whether that's a bad thing. Another thing I'd say as well is that I just wonder how much of this is going to live in the memory, and it feeds back into this chronological order thing again, is that if you were to ask me in 2 years' time, oh, just tell me some chapters in Beyond Two Souls, and I sort of wonder if it's mostly going to be the longer ones that I'm going to remember. Some of the shorter ones are in the lab. They all become a little bit samey, a little bit similar. And I just sort of... moments. I think moments in games are important, and I just don't think that this one has quite enough for me. But parking all that negatives aside, I think the gameplay was certainly unique given the genre that we're in, like the stuff with Aiden, the stealth, all these other things that they introduced that, funnily enough, we didn't actually see in Detroit after that. Characters on the whole, good. Branching, yeah, like, sure, it's pretty linear, on the one side, but at least you do still get that variation to how you get to the ends of each chapter. Very strong performances, most notably Willem Dafoe. Absolutely solid throughout, especially those scenes like where he sees his dead wife and daughter and you see his character go on an arc. Yeah, I could probably go on, mate, but I feel like I'm monologuing a little bit. So overall, yeah, I'm glad I've seen it. It's a good game, but it doesn't quite make it into the top echelons for me. How about yourself?
I mirror what you say. I'd probably give it more like maybe a 7 out of 10, because I do think like the Aiden gameplay is so fascinating that like really bumps up the mark a lot. But yeah, I do agree. It's not a Heavy Rain. It's not a Detroit Become Human. One positive I will say though, again, I just have to say it, the homeless chapter, like it might actually be like a top 3 Quantic Dream chapter for me. Like it is certainly up there, and it is a shame that a lot of the other writing and a lot of the other chapters doesn't quite reach that benchmark for me, because I thought the homeless bit was just, the writing was crazy. It like struck an emotional chord with me. So like I really liked that. But yeah, we talk about the negatives, and it's just what you said, you know, like the fact that a lot of the lab chapters were just repeats, and you know, they're very inconsistent. We'll get like an hour-long chapter, then like a 1-minute chapter, then another hour chapter. And it did feel a little bit murky, and I do think a lot of those lab chapters could have been lumped together a little bit better, or maybe attached onto another chapter. So yeah, the chronological thing is a big gripe for me, because I do think chronological was better. Like when you sort of like reunite with Cole again, it did feel just a bit like, well, I saw you 2 chapters ago in my version of the game, mate. And I think it would have been a lot stronger if we just had all the CIA and the mission and the hunted and, you know, all that stuff in between. And I don't know, maybe a bit of a gripe, the fact that Cole wasn't an ending choice. I think it would have been cool just to be like, Cole, you were the one consistent person in my life. I think maybe he should have been an option at the end there. I don't know. But yeah, and obviously there is the big thing I mentioned as well, how this game just has so many different flavors. Each chapter is very different from one another, or most of them are anyway. That while Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human succeed, they succeed because they have a consistent theme. This game felt like there were too many flavors in the mix, to the point it became a little bit messy. So yeah, like that is a big flaw with it, because obviously we know that when you do prequel stuff, or like, you know, changing the order up and making it jumbled chronologically, that the stakes are lowered, because you know Jodie basically can't die until the very end, where you're up against the entities. So that is a big flaw I have with it. But nonetheless, the game did a lot of stuff right. It's a Quantic Dream game, so they will basically 9 out of 10 times land, to be honest. But yeah, no, very solid game, and I'm really glad we covered it. And I know that Quantic Dream is kind of like maybe less in your arsenal rather than the Telltales and Supermassives. So it's been really fun to kind of watch you freshly react after, and you know, for us to do these analysis series in between, because it's been really cool watching your theories unfold and sort of see how you reacted to the game as we sort of like watched it and, you know, did these videos.
Got to say as well, I did pretty well on that front, didn't I? There's a couple of areas where I was like, oh, okay, yeah, you're a bit off the mark, but on the whole, yeah, pretty darn happy with it. And what I've got to say as well was like a sort of closing remark, is that the game, having like come into this completely brand new, and having only really heard your opinion, and you know, the fact that it was potentially, that's Quantic Dream's most forgotten game, you know, the game was better than what I thought it was going to be. So I think that's a good positive to end on as well.
Very much so. But yeah, and that is that for Beyond Two Souls. So guys, I hope you enjoyed our analysis series. I hope you enjoyed my live streams. We probably will visit Beyond Two Souls in the future. Maybe we'll do a bunch of videos about it, maybe about the characters, maybe some deeper dives on certain sections. There's a lot to unpack and uncover here. So let us know what you thought of our analysis series. Let us know what videos you potentially want to see. If you like choice-based games, look at our channel, guys. We cover everything from Supermassive Games, Quantic Dream, Telltale, Don't Nod, Deck 9, a whole variety. Go in the channel, find something you like. I'm confident you're gonna want to stay. Join our Discord community, where you can find like-minded people. If you come in, you'll get the Spider-Man gift for me saying you came. That's always a boon, isn't it? But otherwise, guys, thank you very much for joining this analysis series. I've had such a wonderful time covering it. It's been an honour seeing Jack's fresh perspectives. And until then, guys, we will see you in the next one.
See you in the infra world.